October 1st, 2025. This is ERP and the Grid Power Systems with me, Karush Koilu, licensed electrical engineer, professional engineer in electrical engineering in the state of California. And this live stream is brought to you by Zayuk Smart Property System. Zayuk is an enterprise resource planning system. It provides an infrastructure for budgeting. It provides an infrastructure for capital management, as well as inspection systems that work for large-scale maintenance needs, whether that be maintaining a repository of data that is traceable and auditable through a ledger system, a blockchain system, or whether it's budgeting. Zayuk provides the infrastructure for that. And we are able to customize that across enterprise level needs. And many customers have specific needs, specific requirements, and Zayuk is able to meet those needs. So we will go to current events. This live stream is about current events within the space, and we'll start with this article by Forbes, Valuable Business Chat, Using Gen AI to Ask Questions of Your ERP System. Getting insights out of an ERP data typically requires specialized tools, complex report building, or IT support. Meant investing in managing data, collecting and storing and ensuring it's accurate and accessible. Building data lakes and data warehouses for report building. Trained business users to manipulate business intelligence and analytics applications to derive insights according to users' parameters. Gen AI changes this model. And it speaks about RAG and small language models fine-tuned to sift through data. And it's interesting to consider RAG, Retrieval Augmented Generation, which is a form of chat. And when you think about agents, a lot of people are talking about JSON-based input and how you can use different prompts to prompt a JSON and then pass that LLM into an agentic coder. There have been a lot of hacks actually through agentic coding, and it seems like a very accessible be attacked maliciously is through an agentic coding tool that may have some blockchain-based system of record is likely easier to traverse than some of the other ones. And I first heard that from venture capitalist Mark Andreessen when he spoke about using blockchain systems as data. It's especially when we talk about various budgeting needs, various asset management needs, decentralized asset ownership needs, there needs to be traceability. And this article continues to go into look at what AI features your ERP system includes. The real differentiation is important. It's important to design. It's important to understand Customized workflows are awesome. And I think we're getting into a point where that is likely going to happen. You see a lot of, I still consider myself to some degree systems engineer, where design and structure and behavioral models are important. Do not necessarily many times. We'll continue. This is from Canary Media. Carrier wants to pair batteries with air conditioners to help the grid. Utilities are struggling to meet demand as AI data centers surge. Equipping air conditioners with batteries and easy and hugely scalable. Ubiquitous outsized chunk of the country's electrical demand. Utilities scramble to meet even more power demand for AI computing. Legacy air conditioning giant Carrier has launched a new business venture to make regular old HVAC equipment part of the solution. Put a battery on central ACs that can charge up when energy is plentiful and take over the job of running the appliances when the grid is stressed. And this individual says, actually doing that requires grappling with many forces, including monopoly utilities, regulators, decentralized energy, intermittent renewable power, and the looming colossus of data centers' energy consumption. They all have air conditioning or a heat pump. How the grid is sized, built, and operated today. The US peak load is about 750 gigawatts. Around 300 gigawatts of that is reserved for HVAC. That's crazy. And then you think about, so US peak load is 750 gigawatts and 300 of that is reserved for HVAC. HVAC is hugely important. I don't want to undermine the importance of HVAC, but it is important to consider that. And then when you think of Europe's current state of debate when it comes to bringing in HVAC systems on a wide scale throughout their continent in balance with they're not receiving the same energy sources that they historically have been, and they're actually trying to decrease that. So when you think about this in terms of the US's peak load is 750 gigawatts and 300 gigawatts of that is reserved for HVAC, this is a good point to that could actually stress the European system at the moment. But having batteries is extremely important. Carrier has begun installing its HVAC-connected batteries in a pilot test with utilities to prove that the product in customers' homes. Some 15 households have the batteries already, and the company plans to install more by the end of the year. Measure the reality of what happens, the profile of loading shifting across weather conditions. Quote, Carrier hopes to eventually scale up the plan by getting electrical utilities to pay for the batteries when households in their territory buy the company's air conditioners, unquote. So this is arguing if they replace an HVAC unit with a battery integrated HVAC, the load of the HVAC unit never shows up at the peak for the next Conditioners rely on AC electricity. Yilmaz's team at Carrier designed a modular battery that sits under or next to its outdoor HVAC unit and matches their electricity consumption during peak hours. Well, this will need to be done I'm sure it's difficult here in the US because we already have the infrastructure. But if Europe is planning to bring in HVAC, then having a battery based an HVAC with a battery system is needed, I would say. It's going to be much more expensive, and even you can see, I mean, if I showed the size of the battery, it's massive. So it's not completely, and people speak about the minerals that go into batteries. Smart thermostats, smart plugs that turn off devices, smart chargers. Technique. Manage everything from solar to batteries and heat pumps in Europe. Last year, homes in the US installed more than 1,250 megawatts of capacity through lead brands like Tesla and Enphase. I've never heard of Enphase, so I will. Two-thirds of US households use central air conditioning or heat pumps. Need to be replaced every 10 to 15 years. 7 million home HVAC units getting swapped out every year. And Carrier sells about 2.5 million of those. Average peak HVAC consumption is 3 kilowatts, and the math works out to an average of more than 20 megawatts of new electricity demand installed every day from Carrier HVAC alone. Company has to convince customers to participate even if the battery is free. Limited or potentially undetectable impacts on the consumer, while conferring good things like billing savings and greater grid reliability. Interesting. Germany transmission system operators announced preliminary electricity grid fees for 2026, projecting a 57% reduction, contingent on government subsidies. Offers relief for consumers and industrial customers. Set to drop from 6.6 cents per kilowatt hour to 2.86 cents per kilowatt hour. That's a huge drop. enabled by a 6.5 billion euro subsidy from the country's National Climate Fund. Grid operator 50 Hertz, Amprion 10T, Transnet BW. Set up. All right. What is Dunkelflaut and how will it change new long duration battery change, Australia's energy grid? Lymondale project designed to store excess renewable power during day and dispatch when demand is high. Australia's longest duration battery will come online this year, a major milestone. Lymondale Battery in southwest New South Wales will be able to pump 50 megawatts of power back into the grid over 8 hours. Long-duration storage technologies such as large-scale batteries and pumped hydro are set to play a fundamental role in supporting Australia's transitions to clean energy, critical for grid stability and security. What is long-duration battery and why does it matter? Rare and unpredictable periods of renewable drought called Dunkelflaut. Long-duration energy storage generally refers to technology that can dispatch 8 or more hours worth of electricity. It's useful because as the amount of wind and solar in the grid grows, the power system needs to manage the variability. You want to be able to shift the supply to different times of the day, and that's what storage does. Australia's energy market operator anticipates a mix of what it calls shallow, medium, and deep storage. Shallow 4 hours, medium 4 to 12, and deep 12 plus will be needed as the nation's share of wind and solar increases. Shallow is with daily fluctuations and frequency stability, while 4 to 12 medium is bank surplus, wind and solar for using during morning and evening peaks. Dunkel and still weather conditions persist. Phenomenon is known as Dunkelflaut, dark doldrums, specific to high renewable grids. That's a very interesting word. It sounds, I don't know where the origin. German term for weather event characterized by lack of wind, sunshine, leading to a significant reduction in renewable energy generation from wind and solar. Dark doldrums, dark lull, and it tests the stability of the grid. Many systems that I've deployed were they use grid and they use traditional fossil fuels. And they heavily rely, most of them that I've worked on fossil fuels. Okay. Okay, so in Australia, the risk is low and it can be minimized by the geographic spread of solar, wind, and hydration generation, or managed with seasonal storage like pumped hydro, Snowy 2.0. Storage economics is quite complex. Different combinations of short and long-term batteries can meet the needs of highly renewable system. But as coal leaves the grid, creating longer periods of high prices in the evening, longer duration batteries become more attractive. Eight-hour batteries is significant because they start to compete with pumped hydro, which stores energy by pumping water uphill. Long, complex to construct, only possible in specific locations. In contrast, batteries are easy to deploy. This is from PV Magazine USA, New Control Strategy for Grid Forming Inverters. Researchers in the US have created a droop control strategy for grid forming inverters that purportedly improves power spaceship. The novel technical headroom reduces frequency deviations and enhances grid resilience. Regulate voltage inertia of synchronous generators, enhances stability and response. Research group from Boulder developed droop control technique designed to improve disturbance responsive power systems, particularly those with high share of grid forming inverters. Replicating the inherent droop characteristics of traditional synchronous generators, ensuring the output power is inversely related to system frequency for active power and to voltage for reactive power. Droop E, nonlinear active power, using an exponential function of power output. The concept is, quote, replace control of a growing. Okay. This is from Ukraine. Warns situation critical as nuclear plant off grid for a week. The Zaporizhzhia, I don't know. ZHCH, I don't know how to pronounce the ZHCH. Has been off grid for 7 straight days. Critical situation. Malfunction in the blackout posed a threat to everyone. One of the backup diesel generators used to maintain malfunctioned. Longest outage since Russia invaded and seized the plant. Never been anything like this. The situation is critical. Both are accusing each other of risking a potentially devastating nuclear disaster. The plant has been cut off from its power supply and the electricity grid. The plant's 6 reactors, which before the war produced around a fifth of Ukraine's electricity, were shut down after Moscow took over. Plant needs to power to maintain cooling and safety systems, which prevent reactors from melting. And we've been hearing about that plant for several years now. Okay, we'll move on. 27 million liters every second inside flow that powers America's grid. This is by El Diario 24. $27 million gallons flow through turbines every second. The water creates energy while solar and wind energy grow. Hydropower is still very significant. The volume is equivalent to the world's largest rivers, demonstrating that hydropower is not just another type of energy. Operates as a result of the simple fact that water is constantly flowing, contrary to wind, which comes and goes, or sunshine, which can simply disappear. Hydropower is reliable baseload energy. It turns the lights on even in response to spikes in energy demand. Does more than just generate electricity. Sources balance loads, regulate frequency, and stores energy. Well, it sources all those things. Dam harnesses the power of the river and sends the water rushing through turbines. As the blades spin, they turn the generator to make electricity that quickly travels through transmission lines, traveling hundreds of miles until it becomes a spark in the wall. Hydropower may make up only 6 to 7% of the electricity produced in America, but its effects go beyond the numbers. Steady, reliable, unlike the potentially fickle sun or unpredictable winds. Hydropower is very difficult for, I mean, it depends on where you are. I'm not sure. Let me just. So China is the largest. There's a few nice graphs here. And it's by far the largest. And this is from a graph from 2022. Hydropower in China is 1,300 terawatts, which is (14.7% of their total electricity produced), which is interesting when you consider some alternatives like Brazil and Canada. Brazil is 427 terawatts and Canada is 398 terawatts. But Brazil, that is at 63.1% of their production. And for Canada, that's at 60.4%. So that is hydropower is a majority for those two countries. And it is not even close to a majority in China, but China just dominates in energy production. Then another big player, Norway. Well, the US is fourth at 249 terawatts, but it's less than 6% of our production. And then Norway, 87.5% of their production is hydropower. Vietnam is nearly 37% of theirs at just under 100 terawatts. The largest hydroelectric power stations, 5 of the top 10 are Chinese. Three Gorges Dam, Behetan Dam, Chilodu, Wolgong de Chiangjiaba. I don't know. I apologize if that is incorrect. And then 3 of the top 10 are Brazilian. One is Itapo Dam, which is shared between Brazil and Paraguay, Belo Monte, and Tucuruí. And then one is Grand Coulee Dam in the US off the Columbia River. Gravity Dam, ancient riverbed on the Columbia Plateau. Interesting. The point to get into there was, well, it's good to know, I think. Okay. So we'll move on to, no, we won't. Thank you, everyone. Hopefully you're all having a great day and a great, well, we'll actually continue. We'll actually continue. I usually cut it off, but there's some more that I like to get through. ERP for decades. This is from Pymons, Pymnts. For decades, ERP, which is Enterprise Resource Planning, promised a single source of truth for finance leaders. But the pace of business accelerates. Many CFOs are finding their ERP is not built to handle the growing complexity of accounts receivable. Specialty AR platforms are stepping in, and why finance chiefs are rethinking the way they balance customization, cost, and future readiness. Environment. Are they managing heavy B2B volume with layers of nuance? Operating across multiple ERPs, whether due to lack of integration or acquisitions, dealing with complex buyer-supplier relationships. If the answer is yes to any of these, ERPs alone usually won't get you where you need to go. This is a true statement because when it comes to energy and power and managing power, that's a true statement. The system that dictates the resources that you're attempting to plan are physical systems, are not simple to maintain, not simple to have oversight over. And as we've spoken about, in and of themselves are complex, and how you manage them, how you optimize them, and how to prepare for the upcoming, I don't know the proper word, requirements through these AI data centers. And it isn't just simply this account receivable platform that you can use for management of capital and management of budgets. Those are good, but with the new technologies you have available today, specifically AI, specifically also blockchain, there are a lot of optimizations that you can use to make the purpose of what you need to accomplish more attainable, whether that be optimizing the budgets, having a transparent system, having a system of record that actually makes sense and has a decent architecture. We'll continue. Payment tech stack decisions facing executives is not binary, but contingent on scale and complexity. Low volume environment ERPs can still represent one of the most efficient and least disruptive paths. Buyers increasingly rely on AP portals and diverse payment rails. The seller's challenge is balancing speed, cost, and risk. I think speed and risk surely. Interesting to consider to another live stream, which is Information Security Now. And Information Security Now, many users, their issue, the Googles and the Microsoft's, a lot of times it will be a third-party vendor that puts them in a vulnerable position in regards to information security. And when you listen to this and ERP planning, it's the same here. You have more complexity in that system, more connections, more external connections. It doesn't increase. At points it does, but there have to be, it doesn't increase effectiveness. It surely adds complexity and adds vulnerabilities, and those need to be balanced. CFOs have become arbitrators of truth. A lot of the data that runs the business rolls up to you. Noting CFO's remit can frequently span ERP, payroll, treasury, tax, and AR systems. Specialized AR solutions. Technology adoption rarely happens in one sweep. Especially in it surely doesn't well, it's interesting to consider. It doesn't happen in one sweep. Maybe you have an individual. There's a difference between enterprise and individual, and enterprise is slower. But even for the individual, it's not that quick. InCap Slovakia integrates ERP and MES systems. Implemented SAP Business One, manufacturing execution platform. Not just an ERP upgrade, it was a complete shift in how we work. We now have full traceability, stronger coordination across departments, and a much stronger foundation for decision making. Allows them to serve customers with more speed, flexibility, and confidence. Team overhauled production processes, introduced barcode-based warehouse management, and rolled out new tools for real-time reporting and materials tracking. Key workflows such as inventory management, production planning, and reporting are faster and more responsive. This is something I found very often with customers, is actually they want a tool and they'll want multiple tools, where if it would be simpler and easier for the system and the operators of the system, both the architects, the engineers, and the architects, to simply minimize everything. That's my personal opinion. You don't want to duplicate needs, and if you can consolidate the needs into one output, it will be simpler, and the integration between all of that data will be able to output and interact more effectively. Okay. All right. Thank you, everyone. Hopefully you're all having a great day, great Wednesday. It's hump day, so keep going. You have 2.5-ish more days, or however